Hello and welcome to FashMash Pioneers, the monthly speaker series that Rachel Arthur and I co-founded to bring together the brightest minds discussing the future of fashion. For those of you new here today, FashMash was founded 8 years ago with a core mission: to encourage open conversation and sharing of ideas to drive the fashion industry forward. Like all of our community, we have had to pivot rather a lot this year due to the pandemic. Typically, these talks would have attracted 150 ticket holders to an event space, but now, obviously, like many things, we are having to hold it via Zoom. The best thing about that, and looking on the positive side, it means that we can welcome incredible pioneers and luminaries of industry from outside of the UK, like our speaker today. Bandana Tewari is joining us from Bali. In fact, in her own words, as of 5 minutes ago, from the middle of the jungle in Bali. So if there are any interruptions on the video, please forgive her, and she may change to just audio at some points in the conversation, although obviously Rachel, who is interviewing her, will be on video throughout. I should also say that that is where Rachel, my co-founder, and Bandana originally met. So it all goes back to Bali. Another brilliant new development this year is that FashMash Pioneers is sponsored by Klaviyo. Klaviyo is an e-commerce marketing platform for online brands of all shapes and sizes, from Skinny Dip London to High Studios. They bring together precision targeting and precise insights to really focus on brands' growth. I know that that is so important to many of our audience today. So if you would like to try a free trial, please go to klaviyo.com/fashmash. That is Klaviyo, spelled KLAVIYO.com/fashmash. Okay, so to get started, how do I introduce a woman like Bandana? She is so multifaceted, so multi-talented, and she is also so eloquent that it's quite hard to know where to begin. But let's begin with the facts. She is an activist, journalist, and thought leader. She was editor-in-chief of Indian Vogue for 13 years, and then she has pivoted to her role today. She continues to write in the fashion industry, most prominently for Business of Fashion, where she writes about topics from indigenous made-by-hand economies of India and Indonesia to transgender and LGBTQIA+ representation in fashion. But then now she also writes for Paragood Earth about ancient Indian wisdom. Her expertise and activism have led her to travel globally as a speaker on mindfulness and luxury business, which I'm sure we would all agree is a concept that is very important, we need to hear more about, as well as a special focus on Gandhi and fashion. Again, a unique and fascinating comparison that we will be delving into today. Her work and renown in sustainability has led her to be a special advisor to the Copenhagen Fashion Summit, as well as sitting on many special advisory boards like the Global Fashion Agenda. Hers is a career that combines people, planet, and philosophy. Specifically today, Rachel, my co-founder, and Bandana will be exploring sustainable leadership. I'm sure many of you will agree that pandemic has had far-reaching consequences across the industry, from economic pressure to tragic humanitarian consequences. Everyone is flagging the need for a reset, whether or not this will happen. For Bandana, interconnectedness is the key concept. This realization is the only means to a more sustainable future and this much needed reset. I can't wait to listen to this conversation. It promises to bring a new, fresh perspective on sustainability, where I feel that we're all discussing it this year, but it keeps coming back to the same buzzwords, the same subjects. What is needed in this conversation is a new vision. And that is what Pioneers, our speaker series, always hopes to bring. So a couple of notices before we begin. Please do ask questions via the Q&A button, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. We will have a dedicated session for Q&A at the end of the interview. Also, feel free to share your ideas in the chat button and area, or of course on social media with the hashtag FashMash, and of course on our handle, which is FashMash as well. Right, I am now ready to hand over to Rachel and Bandana. So please, could you now join the conversation? I will switch off my video and it's time for you guys to switch on yours. Thank you.
Hi, I am so excited you're here. Thank you. And we're working. Your technology is working far better than mine, it turns out. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It is cocktail hour in Bali, but I am very focused on this conversation. I look forward to it, and I just want to apologize to anyone when I'm going to get stuck. The screen is going to be stuck, and I will put off the video, and perhaps you can hear me better. Okay?
Yeah, well, fingers crossed we'll get it working. We have so much to talk about, and I'm so excited. When I was writing the description for this event, I had about 15 different potential titles for it. And I think that says so much, because there's so many different angles that we could take around all of this, partly because of how vast your experience is, your work is, but also how broad your mind goes. And this is why I love talking to you, because you just take us on so many twists and turns, which I'm really, really looking forward to. Before we dive into all of that, though, specifically on the sustainability side, I really want to hear, as you heard from Rosanna, you wear so many different hats these days, but I want to know how you got from being the editor of Vogue India, which, forgive me for saying this, comes in many ways with the objective of pushing consumption, to a sustainability activist living in Bali. What was your journey?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so grateful for my time in Vogue for 13 years. I really am, because there's no chance in hell I would be in this point where, I can say I'm a sustainability activist had I not been in that world and seen how wonderful and creative and perhaps excessive, but I had to do that. And I think the trajectory is very important, and it's not about shaming people or companies. It's our own personal journeys. So for me, it was a very personal journey. I had the best time, the privilege of having doors open to you because you work for Condé Nast, being able to be at the forefront of interviewing the best minds in the creative world, literally being at the forefront of an incredible life. I could write a book about it.
You should.
At the same time, I can never forget where I come from. I am Nepalese. I'm a mountain goat, I'm from, we're the Sherpas. And I lived in India. So in India, and you've been there, have you, Rachel?
Yeah. Yes, I've been there. And Rosanna's a big.
The one thing that you cannot evade, that you cannot shun your eyes towards, is the fact that it's a very bipolar country. And I'm saying this not because out of shaming a country that I've grown up in. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. And when you work in a big fashion industry that has a very consumerist agenda, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. Personal journey for me was the country is bipolar. It is urban, it's rural. It's the rich and it's the poor. It is vernacular and it's English. It is colonization and it's industrialization. It's in every corner of the city, any city that you go to in India. So my personal journey started when I started feeling a little bit of started questioning myself and a bit guilty about being able to be in industry selling such amazingly beautiful stuff that sells for thousands of dollars. And I thought, do people know what the value of money is? Because you're buying your 10th Rolex, but mm-hmm. your 10th Rolex could give education to a village, that money, do you know the value of your money? So it was in my mind, no one else's. And so this became quite fierce. And by the time when I moved to Bali, it was for a lot of reasons. It wasn't professional reasons per se. Most were personal. But when I moved here, and then you live in Bali, and Rachel, we were here together at one point, and you know how it is. It's part of the life that we live here. It is so nature-bound. It is so exemplary in the way we are in touch with the motions of the universe. We are walking bare feet. It is not about what you look like. It's about how you feel, what you eat, what you put in your body, what you wear on your body. It's just the natural way of life. And so for me to make that transition from high-end, high fashion consumerism to being a very frugal activist, living in a jungle, who the hell? Like I'm so privileged to be even talking to you, because I'm thinking, who wants to listen to someone who's surrounded by coconut trees and banana trees? And
all of
here
us,
I
I
am.
think. Sounds very appealing right now, I must say.
So I feel grateful because that this journey, however difficult it was, and let me tell you, it's not easy to give up a job that gave you everything, all the fineries and the poshness and the drama, everything that we love about fashion, right? And then you come here, and then I resigned from Vogue because I needed to be on my own journey as an activist. It was one of the most difficult things I did, because you are literally, you sort of stripped off the life that you knew. And you lose so many people along the way because you're not part of a system that acknowledges you because of that system. And so I'm not saying it was easy, but it's been fruitful over a few years because I love this journey so much. I am a sustainability activist. I want to be super authentic about what I say. And now, as I go along, I feel like I can dip into a culture that I grew up in, the Indian culture, the Nepalese culture, great old philosophies, great wisdom of the past. And I want to resurrect that because they're still applicable, provided we sort of translate it in a language that resonates with you, no matter which part of the world you're in. Because we're talking about humanity. We're human beings. So I found my calling, so to speak.
And I think, and that's what I love about you, is that you always, whenever we speak, you're so sure about your focus. You really are, you come across as somebody that has it genuinely so figured out. And we know how complicated this space is to be in. It's not straightforward to be an activist, and there's a hell of a lot of work to do. And I think one of the questions I want to ask you on that very basis, you've explained how much of a personal journey you've been on to get here, and we'll go much more in depth shortly around what that all entails. But given that for the majority of people watching, probably sitting in a city somewhere around the world, most people most likely in London, as I am, what responsibility do you think the rest of us have to be activists today?
So let me go back to Gandhi, okay? The historical person that changed my life, Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Maha means super, Atma means soul. So he was the super soul, Gandhi. And when I deep dived into his teachings, his own journey with clothes, by the way, with fashion, the one thing that came out very poignantly and very specifically was that personal responsibility is what it takes to be a real, hardcore, badass activist. And we are seeing this today, by the way. I'm no one in this field. There are people who've been working in this field for 30, 40 years. I'm learning. I have my ear to the ground. I'm running on my feet. I do my research. I want to be well informed. And therefore, I'm in my journey to be a real activist. But there are amazing activists today. We see them on the streets protesting for everything from LGBTQ rights to Black Lives Matter, to gender rights, to what have you, Women's March, you name it, right? And if you ask any of these protesters, the ones who are the founders, including the radical, which I love, the radical campaign that came out from Extinction Rebellion, they will quote Gandhi as the inspiration. Gandhi as sort of the humanitarian, the epitome of nonviolence. Nonviolence, which is ahimsa, okay? But he inspired people like you and me to walk onto the streets, to become champions and activists in our individual rights as individuals. So forget the collective. What's a collective? Collective is like an abstract. A collective is made out of individuals. So when you look at protesters walking on the streets, or someone like you and me sitting in homes now and talking about this, we are taking activism as a personal act of dissent, right? So we have a choice. When there is any policy, whether it's against environmental laws, whether it's against gender laws, it's against LGBTQ rights, whenever that happens, there are only three ways that you can respond. Either you can succumb to it, you accept it, you can change it, or you can fight against it. So as consumers or as ordinary human beings and ordinary citizens, it is a moral duty now to become activists in our own rights for whatever you stand up for. And so being an activist, I think, is not a choice. It is a birthright. Like, we need to be activists, consumers, activists, designers, whatever you do, it doesn't matter. Because activism brings us to the heart of standing up for rights that don't just work for you, but has to work for the many.
And you've just, you've listed there so many key subjects and themes right now that are really poignant in this industry that we need to focus on. All different forms of activism in many ways. How do you determine where to focus, or more, perhaps more of a broader question, where do you think the industry needs to be focused right now in terms of prioritizing these key subjects and making sure that we drive forward with the kind of change that's needed?
Yeah, Rachel, I mean, I think about this a lot because there's so much work being done in the sustainability world, right? And I always think that what can I do that matters? So me, like a tiny person with very little experience sitting in the jungle in Bali, like, what can I do? So I think the idea about the thing with sustainability is it's become such a topic of conversation, which includes a lot of greenwashing and what have you. And it's become like the trendy word, like the new black of fashion, right? The black is sustainability is the new black. And we can keep talking about how facetious all this becomes. I want to cut that. I want to cut that and have personal responsibility over what sustainability means. So if we look at the way we consume, where we live our lives, then what are the changes that I can make personally as a personal commitment? That for me is monumental in understanding what sustainability is. So you can look at it with everyday life. What can I do to make my life more sustainable? Yes, I will never use plastic. I'm not going to use the laundry too much because we know what it does with microfibers and microplastic. I may turn vegetarian. I may be vegan, what have you. But even beyond that, I feel we need a philosophical change. Like, we need a change of heart. Because my provenance, my heritage, which is thousands of years old, which I'm discovering now in my own journey, already laid the path out for what it means to be sustainable. Sustainability is a humane act. So going back to what Gandhi propagated, ahimsa, which means non-violence. Non-violence in thoughts, deeds, and actions. In fact, Gandhi himself said, non-violence is not a garment that you put on and off at will. The seat is in the heart, and it must always be so. It's so simple. Fundamentally, it tells us to be good human beings, not just because to each other as human beings, but to plants, to the earth, to everything that exists, coexists with us. For far too long, human beings have thought of themselves as being the only species that were elevated. So the animals didn't matter so much, the trees didn't matter so much, the forest didn't matter so much, but we are all species that coexist. So non-violence is understanding that we coexist. It's not just about saying, I'm going to be a good human being, but I'm going to cut the forest that I see because, it serves humankind. But that's just one kind of species, humankind. then what are you going to do when everything is pillaged for the profits of human beings, as if we're the only ones that exist in this world? So it's fundamentally very simple, but it's also profound, because you have to believe that, sorry, as a human being, you're not that special. The dolphin is as important. The shark is as important. The algae is as important. The mushroom is as important. So that interconnectivity is what I am pursuing to speak about when I talk about sustainability now.
And I want to come back to that word interconnectivity, because there's so much to dig into and pull apart a little bit there, as you very eloquently have done already. But I find it really fascinating what you're saying there around this idea, that humans can't be the most important species that exist. But I really feel at the moment the fashion industry is in a very interesting time, or maybe the globe full stop, where actually we're sort of pitting nature and humanity against each other, or environmental and social justice as two opposite things that need to be to be in contradiction with each other, as opposed to obviously being in harmony. And I think we've really seen that throughout the pandemic. There's this argument of it being a plus because the environment can recover, but then obviously hugely negative, no doubt, from the health side of things with the crisis itself, but also within our industry, obviously the massive humanitarian crisis that we've seen happening in places like your home country and many other producing markets around the world. What do you think that balance is in terms of the way that industry has to approach those two sides of sustainability, the environmental and the social justice elements, and can we find a way to connect them, as you've said, and actually treat them as one entity?
So let me go back to Gandhi. So Gandhi inspired the most phenomenal people that we've never heard about, okay? And of course, because I've been researching, I'm learning. So one of them, I'll speak about two of them. One of them was Ernest Nez, who was a peace researcher, and he's the one who coined the term deep ecology that we use very flippantly now, deep ecology. So deep ecology, as opposed to shallow ecology, shallow ecology tells us that everything that exists in our environment is for the benefit of human beings. So we can pillage the forests, we can pillage the agrarian landscape, we can pillage lands and fruits and what have you, animals. That's the shallow ecology. Deep ecology, according to Ernest Nez, was about we need to coexist and allow every other species to flourish as we do, because we are one species. And so Gandhi was one of his inspirations. And this all I learned when I'm doing my research. What do I know about, peace research? And he was a phenomenal, Ernest Nez, please, everyone, please Google him. He's incredible. Mm-hmm. So this is allowing nature to exist in harmony without being pillaged, okay? The other person that Gandhi inspired, so just to give a little backdrop, Gandhi was an activist, writer, a journalist, became a politician, and became a humanitarian. He was what we call the father of the nation in India, that paved the way for India to get independence from British colonization. And Gandhi had a very profound way of looking at economics, for instance, apart from every other thing, economics. So an exemplary economist called E.F. Schumacher, who was very influenced by Gandhi and writes about Gandhi as the economist of the common man, the economist of the poor man. And the reason was because Gandhi, like a lot of freedom fighters who were influenced by him, whether it was Dr. Martin Luther King to Nelson Mandela, to you name it, Dalai Lama, they've all been influenced by Gandhi's idea of economics, was empower from the roots, because your environment is looked after by people who live within the environment. So most of the countries have thrived and flourished because they were village economies, right? You lived with your trees, you lived with your pigs, you lived with your cows. You didn't just go and pillage nature because, no, there's an ecosystem that has to feed into a cyclical way of to be able to thrive and to propagate, procreate. And so when Gandhi talked about an anarchic system which was not centralized, like a central government that looks after everything that is so different from the homogenized world that we live in, they thought he was naive and regressive. And E.F. Schumacher, the economist, called him the economist of the common man. And now that morphed into Buddhist, it's called Buddhist economy. So we need men and women, hopefully more women, sitting in conference rooms, decision-making tables that believe in, and I'm saying this not in a religious way, but in a philosophical way. They all need to be Buddhist economists. Like, you cannot continue to think that you are going to build your riches based on the blood and sweat of people continents away from you in developing nations. We've seen this in Bangladesh, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And you've said so many things there that I think resonate and are so interesting. You know, in many ways, a lot of what you reflected on there with Gandhi and the way that he approached, obviously, these village economies relates to obviously what we talk a lot about now, or want to make a reality with the circular economy. You know, there's a lot of questioning of capitalism happening. That all fits into this as well. And I love that notion of philosophy. And I'm really interested to get your view, you know, as per the title of this talk, which is exactly why we gave it the title of Reimagining Sustainable Leadership. Like, you say, we need to bring that into the boardroom. How do we actually make that a reality? How do we make our leaders think in a completely different way to the way that they do right now?
Well, coming from me, who's sitting in a jungle, who's barely making enough money.
Why not come from you? You know, it's got to come from somewhere, because it's clearly not working the way it is.
I mean, if I were in a leadership role, so I can only talk, this is why we need female leadership, because female, I'm not a leader, but women can empathize. Men can sympathize. I can put myself in your shoes, and you tell me you've got 3 kids and you have to go look after your family, a patriarchal husband, not you, I'm just saying generally, patriarchal husband. Well, I come from a country that's full of it. I had a patriarchal husband, which I passed that. You have a full-time job, you have to look after your kids, you have to look after your own blood. The amount of pressure that, so women understand, if I were the boss lady and you came and said, I can't do this because I've got 5 other errands to run because I have commitments to my family, I empathize. I can put myself in your shoes. I've been pregnant. I know what it means not to be able to go to work when you're pregnant. I know what it means not to be able to sleep when you've given birth. I know how you desperate to go back into your work, but your body is not ready for it. Women can empathize across the board. Men sympathize. So there's a huge difference. So I feel there should be leadership with women. Number one, there is no doubt we need more women. At the same time, I think whether it's men or women, if we continue to think people are products, we're screwed for life. We've already seen this with data mining, right? Every time Mark Zuckerberg, or whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, they get slammed. You've seen the documentary Social Dilemma that tells you exactly how we are being manipulated as data. We are data mined. So I'm a product and so are you. We are the ones who are being advertised. And so if that is the world that we're going to live in, then we need a massive shift in leadership, because people have to be before products. And we as journalists, like at least me as a journalist, so yes, people have to be before products, but we as journalists, and to every person who's in the media companies, please listen to this. We need to bring the process out. We need to tell people, what is the process of making something? What does it take? How many hands has to hold this? This is a hand-dyed, hand-blocked, beautiful kaftan. it's from Yogyakarta in Indonesia. I cannot tell you. I could do a whole documentary on just this one piece of garment,
Mm-hmm.
right? So process is important. So there's people, there is process. Of course, there's a product and a thing of beauty that we're always going to buy. But now with COVID, I feel we need to add another P, which is purpose. What you buy, what you do, what you say, whose life are you changing? I have a choice to buy many things. But if you give me 2 white t-shirts that look exactly the same, and one is made ethically, one is made ethically because in the value chain, in the supply chain, people are being paid right. And there's the other one that doesn't give a shit. We as consumers now need to make a choice. And we are with our smartphones every day. We have every kind of information that we need. We can hashtag, I can reach, Donald Trump with one message, right? There's no 6 degrees of separation. It's one. I can say what the hell I want directly to him, whether he reads it or not, or anyone in the world. So let's understand the power of social media, hold companies accountable, understand who you're buying into, because we need to buy. We need to buy because we want to buy. We love beautiful things. But please, I just feel with all the information that we have, all the tools that we have to understand where things come from, who made them, let's make mindful decisions. Let's be conscious consumers. Let's not be conspicuous consumers. We're doing that too much. And we know what that does to the environment and to people.
And conscious leaders in that sense as well, then, is kind of what you're saying. And
yeah.
I think that's fascinating. And I love the idea that you've touched on, the importance of transparency and accountability. One of the things you mentioned when we were talking before, and this feeds into that notion of the way that we tell the stories, is about this idea of language and the language of sustainability. And I want to just sort of say yourself back, because I love this phrase. You use the phrase molecular unity is a better word than eco or green or organic. Can you explain what you mean by that, and why we need this sort of shift in language around sustainability?
Again, everyone has their own journey. So I'm not trying to sound pompous. I'm learning on the job. And I live in Bali. We walk barefoot on the grass. So from my perspective, where I live and the experiences that I have, I feel so connected to the universe, the interconnectedness, right? I also love science. I love quantum mechanics. So quantum mechanics teaches you, for instance, that at a subatomic level, we are, as human beings, or a plant, a tree, a table, an inanimate object, we are all constituents of the same energy and the elements that makes up the universe. So just to explain, my body, for instance, has carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, gold. I mean, look at the element chart. We have lots of those minerals. What's keeping me together is the subatomic particles that vibrate and make me into a human being. Just like the table will remain a table because it's destined to, because of the frequency of, this is science, by the way. This is not me going like loopy because I live in Bali. And then all these elements that make up your body, my body, the trunk of a bamboo tree, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, whatever, it is there in our stars and our planets. Mm. So, my favorite cosmologist, Carl Sagan, said it first. And then my second favorite astrophysicist, Neil deGrasse, repeated it and said, you know what? When you see the constituents of our own body, the ingredients of our own body, and you look up in the stars and you see what the ingredients are of the stars and the planets, we're the same. We as human beings are stardust. So I just find that so beautiful. So beautiful because we are interconnected from a subatomic level to a cosmic level. So how do we tell people, if you get into that zone, I can't hurt a tree. I can't hurt an animal. I can't hurt another human being. Isn't that what environmentalism is all about? Like, how far do I need to look? Can I make it into a personal quest? I mean, these are questions for myself. This is my journey. And I find it easier to accept the ideals of sustainability if I look at it from a very personal vantage point. That who am I as a human being? What makes me a human being? And what makes the plants grow right in front of me? And why is Saturn that way? Then suddenly the commonalities become so apparent, and then you love everything. You don't want to destroy things. So it's spiritual, it's philosophical, and I love the journey. And I hope that individuals can go on that same journey.
I love that you're literally able to connect in a couple of paragraphs this notion of an insect and a plant and quantum mechanics and outer space all living within the same conversation of sustainability, which I can imagine most of the people watching today have not thought about whilst they're sat doing their work, thinking about how to make a more sustainable fashion industry. And I think that's one of the points I want to follow up with then is like, I love talking to you because you make my mind go into different places and you make me want to end this evening looking up at the sky and thinking about the moon and the stars and everything else, as we've talked about so many times before. But I then try and think about, okay, what's the reality? I'm going to finish this conversation. I'm going to go back to the day work. I'm going to go back to helping to figure out how this industry shifts. And I see blocks. Like, what do you think are the ways to get round the challenges that the industry would immediately present and put up there, which are, of course, the systems that we have in place and the structures that we live by, capitalism itself? How do you, I know you keep saying this is your personal journey and I have so much respect for that, but at the same time, I know as an activist that your intention is to drive change more broadly. So how do you see that actually being adopted across the industry otherwise? And what can we do to try and get some of this through? Because it's the kind of thinking I think we need.
Well, yes. I mean, I can get into that loopy zone. So you have to, which is, for me, it's not loopy at all, but, to hardcore people living in amazing cities and making great money. I may sound loopy, but I have a great anecdote. So it has to start from there. I'm not saying I love innovators and in technology. Like, we've been in Copenhagen Fashion Summit, we've been there in Global Change Award, and we've seen what biochemical engineers can do when they collaborate with designers and they're making fabrics out of algae and mushrooms and crop waste and vegan leather. I am fascinated by all of it. So that's one level of sustainable practices that can change the world. I get it. But I'm just in that space right now where it's about individual change, right? So there's a great Zen, what can I say? He is the master of wisdom. And in fact, Dr. Martin Luther King nominated the Zen master for the Nobel Prize. And when this Zen master gave a talk, he would always say, just take a piece of paper like this, right? Just take a piece of paper and stare into it. I'm not lying, I'm going to show it to you. And stare into it. And he says, if you're a poet, you're going to see clouds on that paper. If there were no clouds, there would be no rain. If there was no rain, there would be no trees. If there were no trees, then the woodcutter wouldn't be able to come and cut the tree and make paper like this. Then he says, then look at it. Maybe you see sunshine. If there was no sunshine, no forest would exist. If no forest existed, then where would the woodcutter come from? I said, the whole philosophy of life and environmentalism is in a piece of white paper. So I love, that makes me want to be a change maker. That makes me want to make change in my own life and hopefully inspire others too. So we don't need to look at profound things outside, because sustainability is so huge a topic. People are doing good things in different segments. But what are you doing personally? Let's hold ourselves accountable. How transparent are we? How, even me as an activist, I have to correct myself every day. I can't keep saying I'm a sustainability activist. And, once in a while, I'm like, oh, damn, you know what? Maybe just having a plastic glass or a bottle of water is easy. We have to keep correcting ourselves. But I keep going back to this paper. This is the philosophy of life. This would not exist if we didn't believe in a wonderful ecosystem that has to thrive. So, Rachel, that is what's becoming my focus.
I love it. And I think that's it's such a beautiful thought that, hopefully everyone listening today can sort of step away and just take a moment to get a piece of white paper, because that seems like such a sort of beautiful moment of kind of, reimagining, restarting, hitting reset, which obviously we're talking about so much right now. But maybe just to end, before we open it up to questions, you could just give everyone, one or two words of advice that if they themselves do want to make their own actions towards being more sustainable, or indeed to becoming an activist, what guidance would you have for them on, where to begin with it?
Well, few guidelines. Number one, if you're an activist, then you are not going to buy too much. Buy less. Buy less, buy things of value. When I say value, it's not necessarily monetary, but if you're spending a little bit more, know that maybe your money is going to the right people. So when I buy something of value, everyone's like, oh my God, I'd love to be sustainable, but it's so expensive. I'm like, hell yes, it's expensive, because to be sustainable, you have to be accountable and transparent. You have to show the world every stage of your journey, and it takes time and money. So pay the $3 extra.
Yeah.
Don't buy 10 t-shirts, buy 2, but buy mindfully. So buy less, but buy mindfully, so that you know where your money is going. And COVID has reminded us our money is going to be very important. We want to know how we are going to spend the money that may disappear, and who knows how long this stupid thing is going to last, right? Number 2, we have a smartphone in our hand every minute of the day. Please be informed, research. Every company is now beholden to talk about their policies. You can find out. There's social media campaigns like Fashion Revolution, you name it. You can go there. What was that? When Bangladesh was not paid.
The Pay Up campaign.
Pay Up. It's all there. It's social media. Your individual voice matters. So use that in the right way. Hold every brand accountable, because you can hashtag, or you can, use their IG handle and ask them direct questions. I think the power of social media can be harnessed in a way that can hold companies accountable, even at the cost of shaming them, okay? Even at the cost, because some of them certainly need that. Buy less, buy things of value, use social media for a good purpose. And then my last one comes from my own heritage. So I'm not religious, so this is very secular. And we have a term called dharma. Dharma is your personal moral code. What is your moral code? Please sit back, meditate if you have to, and think about what is your moral fulcrum that defines you. When you are given a situation in life, what are you going to choose? Are you going to go in this direction that is harmful, hurtful, non-productive? Or are you going to go here, which is compassionate, mindful, embracing? inclusive. That choice is yours. That's dharma, your own moral code. And when you choose your dharma, the path that you want to take, defined by your moral code, then it defines your karma, which is the cause, which is scientific, the cause and effect. So don't moan when you feel bad about things. You probably made a bad choice, right? So karma is a karmic cycle that is defined by the decisions that only you can take. When you do a good thing, who feels best? You do. When you do a bad thing, who feels bad? You do. You don't have to wait for the universe to tell you that. If I lie to someone, I feel shit. If I hurt someone, I feel shit first. So dharma is your moral code and karma is the causation. If you just believe in this fundamental little diagram, then, right choices that are not harmful, that are grateful, that are compassionate, mindful, sustainable, we just bring a different energy to the world, into a universal karmic energy.
Thank you so much, Bandana. That's the most perfect note to end on. I think gives everybody so much food for thought, actually, both within their personal life and actually as well for the companies they work for. And let's see if we can get these fashion organizations to think about their dharma and their karma as well, because it definitely relates. Let's invite Rosanna back and see if we can take some questions from the audience. Hi, Rosanna.
Hello.
Hi.
That was so fantastic. I was enraptured by the whole thing. And as Rachel mentioned at the beginning, I am a massive Indiophile. So having you on the call is just a privilege. And the white piece of paper, I did it live. Although my white piece of paper had a bit of writing on with my notes.
Okay.
Right. I saw sunshine. We have so many questions. So I want to take them from the top. The very first one for you is from Ines O'Gorman. She said, I'd love to understand how or where did you find the courage to make such a brave move from a big corporate job to an activist?
How about a bad ex-husband? It's funny. Pain teaches you a lot. So I'm not going to lie about it. Sure, my journey was amazing. But the biggest teachings that I got from my life was through pain. So I was in a horrible marriage, needed to cut loose. I didn't enjoy the consumerism of my the job at the time. All of it, then it coagulated into this amorphous monster, and then I had to run away. So pain is the biggest teacher. Pain, emotional pain is such a big teacher, but we have to learn to embrace it, sit back, because it goes away, and what we can learn from it. So yeah, it sounds like it was a massive change. It was. I left my whole life, high-end life, married to a very rich guy, blah, 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 blah. It's like ridiculous life that I had, and then just gave up everything. I gave up my job, I gave up my goodies, and arrived in Ubud in a forest with like 3 suitcases. And I'm a single mom with like a 9-year-old going like, I have no idea. But I did believe in the journey. So the courage comes not because I knew what I was doing. The courage comes from, you become shameless when you're in pain. You become more daring when you're in pain, emotional pain. And that was my journey. And it gave me the guts and the gumption to like break barriers and say, fuck that, I'm just going to do what the hell I want to do. And so, yeah, your emotions, my emotions, that's what changed my life.
Yeah, guts and gumption. What a story. Okay, next question from George Poulios, who I know is joining us from the USA. His question is, based on your core beliefs, who are your favorite, most mindful companies at this moment?
Well, there's several. So internationally, I love Patagonia. If you go onto the website, they don't ever claim to be 100% sustainable, but everything that you buy will tell you what the carbon footprint is. But they will also tell you where they're getting their resources, the accountability and the transparency for every product. And then I live in Indonesia and I've lived in India. There are amazing young brands that are so culturally immersed, so emotionally engaged with what they're doing, that the storytelling, the way they tell the stories of creativity involves everyone along the path, whether it's the weaver or the dyer, vegetable dyes, to how they don't manufacture too much. So, I could give you so many names from India. There are exemplary small brands, 1111, Raw Mango, Good Earth, Paro. They are heart brands. You know what I mean? They are heart brands. And you can resonate with that. And there are tons in Indonesia too. And they're all over the world. They're in Mexico. They're in... don't ask me to give a list. That's like tiring. I could just type it in. But I think they could very well be in your neighborhood. So what we need to do, especially if you ask a question like this, is like, see who in your community, in your neighborhood, in your society, in your country, who are the designers who would live up to these ideas? And I promise you to find them. And now with COVID, because we can't travel anywhere, it is all the more that important to look into your own backyard and see who's doing the right job with the heart and soul and humanity. And they are there. They've been invisible. They've been invisible for such a long time because big companies take over, right? Now, maybe it's your personal duty to find out in your own city, village, community, who are those creators who deserve to be acknowledged and whose stuff that you can buy and feel very good about buying it.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea of looking locally, particularly in light of the I think increase in local retail that we've all experienced this year because of lockdown. Great idea. Okay, so we only have time for one more question. So I'm going to go for Pooja just because simply she asked her question sooner. Please forgive me, Haya. Pooja says, Bandana, you are great. I think designers need to learn so much from you. Any guidelines to start up a new brand which is eco-friendly?
I love this question. I love this question because I have no money, but I put all my money on the young designers who are starting out now, because the designers who start out now have to make a business in a state of conflict, where we are talking about climate crisis. We are talking about environmental laws that the biggest countries in the world don't want to adhere to. We are talking about, and clothes is about everything. It's about gender. It's about patriarchy. It's about equality. It's about artisans. It's about factory workers, labor rights. It is complex and we should know it. So if you're starting out a brand, you're in such a good place because you are in tune. The very reason why you're listening to this conversation is because you're in tune with what is to come. No company, I believe, or no brand can now survive without taking into account what it does to people before products. Okay? So you start your company. You sow your seeds of sustainability. As your brand grows, your sustainable practices grow. They grow alongside. They're not disparate. Okay? Then believe in your tribe. Don't think that you have to be so globalized, that you have to attend to every person in every part of the world. No. Believe in your tribe who have the same ethics that you do. We don't have to please everyone. We lived in a world that was so globalized, so homogenized. Everyone wore a hoodie, jeans, and a t-shirt, and we thought, I can be the same person in Jakarta, in Bombay, in Tokyo, in San Francisco. We homogenized and we decided that being the same is the best thing to be. Not at all. Being different is wonderful. Acknowledging that we are different is wonderful. What is common is humanity. That's it. That we are human beings, that we coexist with other things. So if you're starting a brand, be humane, be just, be fair, and all that. Humane, just, and fair. That's sustainable. That's, I mean, without have to going into the United Nations, whatever. That is what sustainability means. Humanity, kindness, compassion, creativity with compassion. And if you're starting out, it couldn't be a better time. So I wish you luck.
That's so beautifully put, and also really succinctly and understandably put. So thank you so much. Rachel is going to get the final few minutes with you as a little finale of quickfire. But before I hand back over, I just wanted to thank all of you for joining today. Really great conversation in the chat, really brilliant questions. A big thank you to our sponsor, Klaviyo. And then finally, I just wanted to say that usually we charge tickets, but since the pandemic, we have been opening these up instead for a donation to a charity of the speaker's choice. Bandana has chosen a very brilliant charity. Now tell me if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly.
I have to take this video because I'm supporting.
Yes, take a video of me talking about it. Yes, please. Yes. So Bandana has chosen. Shall I go?
Yeah, now.
Bandana has chosen a wonderful charity called Yayasan Dria Raba. It is an orphanage for blind children in Bali who are struggling with resources due to COVID-19. Just after the talk and after everything that is going on at the moment in the world, this could not be a more important and worthy charity. So I know that it's difficult for all of us at this time, but if our attendees were able to donate even a small amount, it would be hugely appreciated. We're going to be sharing a link to donate via our social after this talk and also emailing our attendees. So it's a very brilliant charity. I wouldn't expect anything less from Bandana. And yes,
and
we'll be sending out a link.
Something? This charity has been, I'm supporting teenagers who are supporting this charity. There are 3 boys. There's Jamie, there's Mar, the Bono, they're kids. And that's what they're doing. So guys, you can give $2, you can give $5, but please support young people to support the ones who are in need. I really would appreciate that.
Absolutely, that's perfectly put. Okay, handing back over to Rachel. Thank you all very much for coming and for joining.
Thank you so much. Right, Bandana, we always end on something really fun, which is our quick fire round. I haven't told you about this, but it's super simple. I'm going to give you 2 words and you have to choose which one of them you prefer or is more aligned with your way of thinking. So, you ready? Some of these are going to be obvious. Number 1, catwalk or jungle?
Jungle.
India or Bali?
Ooh, tough one. Bali.
Nature or outer space?
Outer space.
I didn't think you'd say that. Amazing.
I'm like, I watch documentaries on outer space to go to sleep. Like, that's my meditation.
That's amazing. Okay, these are still related then. Sun or moon?
Moon.
Meditation or conversation?
Conversation.
Conversation or action?
Action.
Your own actions or industry actions?
Own actions. Personal responsibility.
And last one, 2020 or 2050?
2020.
Amazing.
That's the best lessons in life.
We've learned a lot this year, that's for sure. Bandana, we've learned so much from you today as well. Thank you so much. There are the most phenomenal comments of everybody saying how wonderful you are. I'll share some of them with you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for coming to us from the jungle. I'm so humbled by you. And I so hope that finally all of these restrictions will lift and we can be together in Bali again one day. Thank you so much.
I can't wait to hug you and welcome you. But it will be even better because I think moving forward, we will value human relationships environmental relationships, much more. This has been a big learning curve, however difficult it is, but it's going to be good moving forward. And everyone else, thank you for listening to like Crazy or Me.
Not at all. I think everybody has been absolutely loving it. Thank you for being here and look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.